Good morning, Mr. Zamaroczy. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell me about this conference that you're helping organize in Brazzaville on the 23rd of March.
We are co-hosting with the BEAC, and the Central Bank of Central African States, and the IMF, a conference on financial inclusion. Financial inclusion is a fancy term for what basically covers the idea of allowing households, individuals, small and medium-sized enterprises to have access to basic financial services offered by formal financial institutions. Typically, those individuals, those households do not have checking or savings accounts. Typically, they do not have debit and credit cards. Typically, they do not have basic insurance contracts, which means that they operate exclusively on a cash basis, which has evidently very strong limitations. So this conference will look into why is this the situation, why in Central Africa financial inclusion is lagging somewhat behind the rest of the world, and how we can help overcoming these obstacles.
Why is it so difficult for entrepreneurs in Central Africa to find financing for their businesses?
Well, typically the issue is that there is a lot of liquidity available at banks who are willing to provide loans, but banks evidently want to have guarantees and want to know whom they are dealing with. And this requires a lot of documentation, this requires proof, this requires collaterals, guarantees, all kinds of financial identities, which typically individuals, households, and small entrepreneurs do not have. And so there is this gap between formal banks who are more attuned to working with the formal sector and the vast majority of the populations and small businesses who are not yet fully integrated in the formal sectors.
So what's at stake? Why are global financial institutions like the IMF consider this issue of access to finance an important issue?
If you can only pay your bills in cash and receive allowances in cash, that means that you have to travel typically long distances, stay in line for long hours, and sometimes there is a risk that either you can lose or have your cash savings stolen, or even their payments delayed or diminished. If you go through a formal financial institution who provides you this electronically with guarantees, then of course this speeds up the transactions. The costs involved in those transactions are typically lower, and you have a much wider range in terms of transferring money or receiving loans or making payments at a distance. So for all these reasons, we believe that increasing access to financial services has a very strong poverty reduction component, and for small businesses, it offers business opportunities through additional financing and therefore contributes to economic growth.
So is this about just broadening the scope of the formal financial sector, or do non-traditional services like microcredit or microfinance have a role to play as well?
Absolutely. Microfinance institutions are an important part of the financial landscape. However, they are typically at the lower end of financial services. Microfinance institutions typically would collect small amounts and would provide microloans or very small loans. These can be extremely useful because they provide a proximity service to those individuals and households who have limited means and limited needs. However, as soon as we look at the more developed segments of the population who with larger, more complex financial needs, and definitely for small and medium-sized enterprises, these microfinance institutions are not up to the task of providing those larger services.
So what are you hoping that this conference might achieve?
We will bring together during this conference bankers, microfinance institution specialists, various academia specialists, and we want them to look at first what are other countries doing in the world in the area of financial inclusion. And there are a lot of lessons that we can learn. And in particular, there are new technologies. Internet banking, mobile banking, branch banking are just some of the ideas that other countries have experienced, and sometimes with extremely a strong success rate. So we want first to look at these international experiences to see how they could be adapted or developed in Central Africa. Learn about the advantages, but there are also some pitfalls and some dangers. To look at how the authorities can promote and at the same time supervise these new innovative financial services, and to make sure that they will become part of the financial landscape in Central Africa.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and my pleasure.